Indian. I'm Charles Carter, your host, and I'm a proud 1974 graduate. The Old Indian Reflections are where we highlight the Indian alumni and their stories of the time they spent in the West Texas town of Abilene while attending McMurry College before the mascot change. Our guest today is the legend, Mr. Lonnie Hobbs, number 24 in your Indian football program and number 1 in your heart. Good afternoon, Lonnie.
Well, thanks for the grand introduction, Charles. It is not exactly accurate, but it's close enough.
Okay. All right, let's get to the most important things right here at the first. And I'm having a hard time deciding which one I ask about first. Do I ask about Miss Debbie or do I ask about the vet? Which one do we talk about first?
We're going Debbie.
Debbie for 200.
Yeah, for 10,000. How's that? Yeah, but that was a good setup. But I saw what you were trying to do there.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I kind of thought it was pretty lame, but I knew you'd lead off with that. So she doing all right?
She's doing fine.
Good.
Doing fine.
Good.
And we're still dealing with her little problem with her eyesight, but everything is we're blessed, Charles.
Good. Well, Lonnie, start off a little bit and tell us a little bit about your upbringing. I see that you were born in Fort Worth, and your dad was a World War II and Pearl Harbor vet. See, you graduated in 70 from Castleberry. Now, is it true that they erected a statue of you because of your outstanding academic and athletic performance at Castleberry?
Those rumors are somewhat exaggerated and self-perpetuated, okay? But they exist in somewhere in the universe of wishes.
Okay, so we're good to go, huh?
Yeah, we're good to go.
All right, you left. You played after you graduated in high school. You went to Baylor on a baseball scholarship. How was that experience?
It was great. I loved being at Baylor. I loved the history and the traditions they had there. Baylor's a great school, but there were two things. One, my arm didn't cooperate. I had elbow issues. I had them in high school and in the summer American Legion going into Baylor. And then just real quick, back then we would have fall training. You could have like 20 workouts in 30 days in the fall, and then you'd start baseball in the spring. Well, we got delayed because of unseasonable rain delays. It rained for like 3 or 4 weeks in a row, so we could never start our training. And once you have your first practice, you only have like 30 days to get in 20 workouts. Well, it rained every day for weeks, so we never could get outside. So by the time we could first get outside and work out, and we didn't have indoor workout facilities at that time, I hadn't done anything and throwing. And so when I went out, I hurt it again. So it was just ugly. But in the spring, I decided to try to go get a job. After about the second semester was over, I was going back to Baylor, and I went to summer school at McMurry and met Debbie in Caroline Couch Blair's speech class in summer school, and met some of the other players. I think Busby, Bob Patty, Bobby Jen, Pete Peters. There were a lot of the old guys. I shouldn't say old guys. Upperclassmen there hanging around the campus. I got to meet some of them and got to talking football, and they kind of encouraged me to walk on, so I did. And you kind of know the story, but Debbie and I started dating, and then went from there. So Debbie kind of chased me around the campus, caught me, put me in Gold Star, and I stayed there for 4 years.
And you loved every minute of it, didn't you?
I did. Being at McMurray, it was a great experience. But the people there were, I mean, solid, outstanding folks. I met some really good people.
Well, that's what we're trying to highlight. This is trying to bring back some of the old memories that we had, and it's interesting. I visited with a couple of people that are old timers, and I said, I want you to get on a podcast with me and let's talk about some old stories. And they said, well, I don't know any. I can't remember them. And then an hour and a half later, we got off the phone after telling stories. Everything was good. So it's amazing how you can sit back and you can look at this and, and people remember things. And, yesterday we talked about the cafeteria manager.
Yes.
Did you see what kind of response we got out of Facebook last night?
I have not checked Facebook today. So.
We've got two of there must have been two people running the cafeteria, but we've got both names out there, and that the old Indians came through.
Okay.
And so it was kind of interesting. Brett Parr even put in there that he knew which one took his dog poop off of his plastic, dog poop off the snack bar. He knows who has that.
Well, speaking of that, I remember when I first got there, and I think you were probably at the table. Lonnie Gaston goes and gets a salad, and he comes over there and he's eating. And he's digging into it, just chowing down. And he pulls out a Band-Aid, a used Band-Aid, throws it down and just keeps eating. Didn't hesitate a lick. And we're all kind of sitting there watching it going, Gaston kept his head down, chin up, never fazed him 1 ounce.
Wow. But then when you start getting the rest of the story of Mr. Gaston, you can kind of understand that, couldn't you?
Oh yeah. I didn't know him very well at the time, but that was another piece to the puzzle right there. You kind of and I would say there wasn't a whole lot that fazed Gaston.
Well, you know what I found out when I got there, I was in a 3A school. And I got there and found out there was a whole lot more characters than we had in our school. Just and I don't mean ugly characters. I just mean just good old country boys. And that's what I remember the most is the things like that we used to do. But then after you went, now supposedly there was a story told about you that there was some guys out at a park throwing the ball around, and you walked up and they got to visiting with you and encouraged you to come walk on. Do you remember that particular deal where there was a drug bust going on in one of the bathrooms?
I'm gonna take the fifth here. I mean the legal one. I do not remember. I do not recall anything of that nature to the best of my knowledge.
Okay, well, like I told you yesterday,
Basham. Those rumors.
Basham said they were out in throwing the ball around in the park, and you walked up. And then you threw the ball a little bit, and they said, "Hey, you ought to do that. You throw that pretty well." But what the deal was with the drug deal was it was a bathroom on each end of the park.
Was that at Rose Park?
I don't remember. He didn't say what park it was, but he said that that you threw the ball around, and they were watching as people go in and out and in and out, and then they walked down there. And the guys got kind of scared, so they left. And there was a big old bag of marijuana in there. None of our guys had anything to do with it. It was just that they left it. But then they said you went over and you visited with Coach Fornes. Is that what you did then?
Yeah. Well, yeah. At some point, I had been recruited by Angelo State and a few other schools, SMU, TCU, not in Oklahoma, not as serious as, probably they weren't really recruiting me, but I went and visited, went through all the hoops, through the weekend visits and all that kind of stuff. So we had a coach at Castleberry by the name of Johnny Stoppelman, who had played at Abilene Christian. And so he told me when I left, he said, you ought to consider going out there. But, I had my eyes set on Baylor and I didn't even consider it. Well, then, on further review, after I hurt my arm and I was at McMurry and I knew I was going to be in Abilene, I said, well, I'll go talk to Coach Bullington. So I go over there one day, knocked on his door, and he said, come on in. He goes, oh, yeah, I remember you. But he said, I've got a kid named Clint Longley that's currently on the roster, and he's probably going to be my starting quarterback. He said, he's pretty good, is what he said. He's pretty good. And so, but he said, Coach Fornes over McMurray has a returning senior this year by the name of Roger Martin, who's a good quarterback. So he said, you're probably best chance of playing is going over there. So that's what I did. I went and talked to, and I'd already talked to Basham and I think Jester and Peters. I don't remember who else. Maybe Upshaw, Doug Upshaw was there. I don't remember who else was in summer school. But anyway, I went to talk to Coach Fornes and he said, well, you're gonna have to walk on and make it. And then, if you're good. Sure enough, I walked on that fall. And then toward the end of the season is when they ended the scholarship program. But he went ahead and honored the commitment. He said, you did what I asked you to do. And I think Art Weebush and you may have been in the same position I was. I don't know, but I'll let you speak to that. But
I've heard that story,
yeah.
And I think that's correct.
That's fairly accurate.
Yes, sir.
Well, I'll always be indebted to Coach Fornes for keeping that commitment. But, I don't regret staying there after he left either. So.
Well, it was interesting that the transition they had when Coach I just
Newsom.
lost his name. Yeah. When he went in, Newsom went in. And,
yep.
But it was a good time. We're glad you stayed, and you ended up with there's a lot of people there that you played with that were pretty colorful people, weren't they?
Yes, we had some interesting folks on that football team, and I don't know if you're referring to anybody in particular or if that's a suggestion, but I think that well, when I first got there, golly bum, my mind is slipping. I got a great memory, Charles. It's just short.
Well, now you do realize the statute of limitations has run out, so anything you say, you're legal.
That's true. But I still don't want to incriminate any of my teammates, and I sure don't let my wife know what I actually did when I was at McMurray. So let's see. God, he died just a short time ago. He was a superintendent over in Central Texas or North Texas somewhere. Mike Rosenberg.
Mike Rosenberg.
Matt Rosenberg, great guy. Jay Underwood. Robert Slaughter, the Hofer guy, Larry and Barry. Like I said, I mentioned Basham and Bobby Jester. There were so many guys there that I looked up to and really felt like that they were young men at that time, but people that I admired. So I can't say enough about the people I met. Now the characters, several of those guys came in behind us. Richard King, Oaxaca, Bo Jones, Simmons, Hibbets, golly, there's a bunch of them, but they kind of came in after us, so we paved the way, and then they kind of snuck in the tent after we had already opened the door. How's that?
That's a good description. What was it really interesting to me was that Gold Star Dorm is a real good place to study and to have some quiet time and be able to sleep and everything. Is that kind of the way you remember it?
That was my general experience. I spent a lot of time in the library and at chapel when I was at McMurry. That was where most of my idle time was spent.
That's because it had air conditioning and your room didn't.
Exactly. I was either sitting in my car in the parking lot or I was at the library.
There you go.
We, I think I've still got a book that I checked out from McMurray. The one time I went over there, but actually I did spend some time at the library because Debbie worked over there, so I kind of hung out. It was purely coincidental that I happened to have to, pretend like I was reading something in that area somewhere. It just kind of naturally flowed.
Well, you were very optimistic. Is that what the word is?
And lazy, yes.
Well, I wasn't going to bring that part up, but anyway.
The library wasn't that far from my dorm, so I can get over there. Even in cold weather, I can make it.
Yeah. So after you left, you ended up you coached at Lincoln. That was an experience, wasn't it?
It was. In many ways. You learn a lot on your first job. The learning curve is steep, and I did. But one of the things that I might mention is kind of anecdotal and kind of unique to me. But one of the kids I coached at Lincoln Junior High was our center, and he went on to play at Abilene Cooper. Is now the head of the litigation department at Baker Hostetler in Houston, one of the largest law firms in the United States. And I've worked with him on several cases. He is an outstanding lawyer, but he's even a better man. And so, not that I had anything to do with that, but it's interesting to see how small the universe is. When you see a kid that coach lost track of, and then he hires. Actually, we hired Baker Hostetler to represent Key Energy Services in some of our litigation.
So it's interesting how not only that time you've had other people come across what you were doing at some inopportune times, haven't you?
Yeah, or opportune times, depending on your point of view. Yeah. One in particular, there's two that I'm going to tell you about. One was when I left Permian in the spring of 1979. I was at Odessa Permian baseball, and we were struggling. We had lost a few one-run games. We go to San Angelo. We play. We lose in extra innings on a really bizarre end of the game play kind of thing. And so I'm loading stuff on the bus, and I'm mad dad. I'm not happy with myself, my players, the whole situation. I'm questioning everything about whether or not I want to stay in coaching. And I'm throwing stuff on the bus, and I'm stomping around, my lips stuck out, like a very mature young coach ought to do. And guy comes up and says, "Hey, Hobbs, what are you doing?" And I look over, it's Galen Doan. And he goes, "How you doing, man?" He said, "I can tell you're frustrated." So we have a little, friend to friend talk, teammate talk. He's talking to me. He goes, "Look, man, you got to keep your head up. You got to keep fighting." And I'm poor mouthing. And so finally he says, "Well, look, if you're serious about getting out, I know there's a job in Midland. And keep in mind, this is 1979. The oil boom is going crazy in West Texas. Oil went from $9 or $10 a barrel, went to $30 a barrel. Okay, think about that. $30 a barrel, buddy. And the world is our oyster. We think that, we can go buy Mercedes-Benz, yachts, we're going to be as the wealthiest people in the world. That's the general sentiment around Midland, Odessa. Okay, so I go over to Midland and I interview at Fort Worth Pipe and Supply. And my boss, the boss guy there is named Flake Tompkins. And so he tells me, yeah, I'm glad to meet you. Yeah, I'd love to have you, blah, blah, blah. Sends me on my way. I go back after spring break, go back to school. A few weeks go by, and I don't hear anything, so I think I didn't get the job. And so one day, phone rings, and Flake goes, Lonnie, you still want this job? I go, yeah, I thought I didn't get it. He goes, a long story, but I'm going to offer it to you if you want it. So I double my salary for what I had from coaching. I get a company car, an expense account, and access to a country club membership. Okay. So, I'm going, man, I've died and gone to heaven. So I take the job. So I'm on the job. So I'm over there in Midland in the Permian building. And Galen Doan's cousin, Mike Doan, was our inside salesman at Fort Worth Pipe and Supply. I didn't know that until I got over there. So phone rings one day. Long story short, the guy is calling in for somebody who does not work there. And so it's a mystery to me. Finally, the boss comes in and goes, sit down, Lonnie. I need to tell you a story. He goes, you don't know what's going on, do you? I go, I didn't know anything was going on, so I certainly don't know what's going on. He says, well, he goes, when I interviewed you, I actually offered the job to another young man. And he said, I can't start for a week or so or a few days. I got a fishing trip with my brother I got to go to down in San Angelo. So he said, I'll be back and I'll start after my trip is over. He said, that's fine. No urgency. Well, lo and behold, he goes on the fishing trip. Whoever this guy is, I don't know his name. God bless him. He gets killed on that fishing trip by a crazed farmer or rancher down around San Angelo somewhere who thought that he and his brother out in the river or stream or body of water, wherever they were fishing, were poaching on his land. So he goes out there with a gun and shoots and kills them. Okay, so the guy who got my job was offered my job. He didn't actually get it. He was offered the job that I got at Fort Worth Pipe and Supply. Went to a guy who unfortunately was murdered, and that opened the door for me to go to Fort Worth Pipe and Supply. So I was there for several years. Then, but prior to that, when the Permian baseball job opened, when I went out there, Mike Stevens was coaching at Permian, and he called me one day and said, hey, the baseball coach, Gene McCandless, is retiring at Permian. Are you interested in coming out here? And I said, sure. So I go out there, interview, get the job, and that's how I ended up at Permian. So that job I got through my friendship. And by the way, Debbie was married to Linda Stevens, who was Mike's wife. They're both Childress people. Okay, so that's the connection on the maternal side or the wife side. So Mike and Linda Stevens, we had kept up with, and Mike calls me and asks me if I'm interested in the job. I go out there, interview. John Wilkins hires me, and I become the baseball coach at Permian Assistant Football. So anyway, and I think I got my dates off a little bit on when I left Permian. I actually left Permian in 81. So I went there in 79. So
But Permian was an interesting place, wasn't it?
very interesting. I would describe that as nearly the perfect job for coaching, because we had community support, 100% buy-in, faculty support, student support, the players that we got as sophomores. I started off on coaching JV, and then I would help the varsity help. I worked real closely with Gary Gaines on the passing game. And, I'm going blank again. Wayman Griggs, who was the head JV coach. He coached quarterbacks in the passing game, so learned a lot from those guys. But the level of intelligence of those football players when we got them as sophomores. We'd see them as freshmen in spring training. It was unbelievable how much football IQ those guys had. And they could solve problems on the fly during the game just like a coach would. In other words, we would coach them up, hey, you block down, nobody's there, get on second level, blah, blah, blah. Well, when our kids, they would come to the line, they'd automatically see that there's nobody there for his blocking assignment. They would work out a blocking scheme between them. And it worked. Not every single time, but most of the time. And if you'll give me a little freedom, I'll tell you a story about what happened in 1980, the season we went and won the state championship, in our last regular season game with Odessa High. That kind of demonstrates this point. Have you got time for a quick story?
Yeah.
Okay. Odessa High was coached by Jerry Millsap, and they had a really good team. They had a quarterback, Johnny Sabia, several kids. Johnny went on to play at Baylor, had an outstanding career. He's a great player. And I can't call by name all the rest of them. But we had some great players, too. And so I think our outside linebacker was named Kirk Street. Well, when we got on goal line, it was 6'5", just basically stick them. Go tackle somebody because, it's goal line. They're inside the 5-yard line, and we just got to make a tackle. So Odessa High scouted us well enough, and we were so steeped in our defense and everything, we did the same things over and over and over again. Well, the other teams figured out, hey, if we do this, Permian's automatically going to go this. That's the adjustment they make. They always make this adjustment. And if everything goes right, we make the right adjustment. Well, they're down on the goal line. It's 4th and probably a foot or 6 inches. And it's tied 14-14. And if they score, they win and they go to the district because we're undefeated. They have been tied. They're undefeated. And no, they had been beat by Midland Lee. So they had one loss. They are 8-1. We're 9-0. But if we tie them, they're going to be 9-1-0, and we're going to be, I don't know, half a game off. They're going to represent the district because they beat us. Anyway, when the play snaps, Johnny Sabia is going to run speed option to his left. And our rules are outside linebacker in the 6'5". If that tackle blocks down, you crash. Okay, you run right off that double team's rear end, right off his hip, and you get in the backfield. The other guy's going to scrape. Well, they screwed up their assignments. The guy that's supposed to scrape loops. The guy who's supposed to loop scrapes, and the guy who screwed up scraped right into Johnny Sabia about the time he took the ball behind the guard. Had he done what he was supposed to do, he would have walked in the end zone because nobody would have been there. So they automatically read the play counter to what we had coached them to do, and they made the play that saved their season. We go on and win the state championship. Had they scored, there was only a few seconds left in the game, they would have represented the district, and they would have broken I don't know how many game winning streak we had against them. We'd beat them for like 20 years in a row. But that Odessa High team was really good. But that intelligence of our players showed that night.
Those Gene McCandless was a real good friend of my dad. His brother was a insurance agent in Littlefield.
Okay.
And when y'all played the state championship, we went to the game. My dad took us, and we'd heard about Mojo and walked into a restaurant where Mojo was eating, and you could feel it. You could feel. I don't know whether it was there or whatever, but there was something there. So it was a good.
Oh, I'm telling you. Well, another quick anecdote to that night, it was the 10th game of the season, because back in the old days, Permian and OHS would play, Midland Lee, Midland High would play, and Cooper and Abilene High would play, and then Angelo and Big Spring would play the last game of every year. That was a schedule for years in 4-5-8. So Bucky Jones and I were assigned to go to Sherman and scout the Sherman and Denison playoff game for the next week, assuming we beat OHS. So I wasn't there at Ratliff, or maybe it was at W.T. Barrett. Yeah, I think it was at W.T. Barrett. The night that Odessa High and Permian tied 14-14, that story that I just told about the kids making the play. That game ended up in a 14-14 tie. So we were 9-0-1, and Odessa High was 8-1-1, and for the season. Well, the game that we're playing, or Bucky and I are scouting up in Sherman, ends up in a 14-14 tie. Okay? So Permian and OHS, the winner of the Permian OHS game is going to play the winner of Sherman Denison. Both games end up in a 14-14 tie. And so Sherman is going to represent that district as a result of that tie. So, but we don't have cell phones back then. So we go to a payphone and we're calling the press box in Odessa, trying to figure out the score to find out, how carefully and how quickly we need to get back. Because if we got beat, it doesn't matter. We're not going to be playing the next week. If we're going to advance, then we got to beat Cheeks back and get the film back, get the scouting report done. So we call and we go, and of course it's bad connection. It's loud crowd noise. You can't hear anything. And trying to convey to the coaches in the press box at W.T. Barrett Stadium that this game ended in 14-14 tie. How did yours turn out? And he goes, no, ours is 14-14. We go, no, it's 14-14. So he's like a who's on first conversation for 5 minutes trying to figure out, because I can't really hear what they're saying. They can't hear what I'm saying. Anyway, finally figured out that both deals, and we're going to advance. So, man, Bucky and I get in the car, and we beat Cheeks out to the airport, get in this little private chicken bird plane, and we get back to Odessa at 3 o'clock in the morning. We're up at the school at 5 o'clock the next morning doing the scouting report. So, yeah, it was an exciting time and a very good learning experience for me as a young coach. So,
how much did your playing experience at McMurry have to do with how you reacted in some of your coaching duties, as far as at Lincoln or at Permian or with Coach Newsom down at Conroe or whatever? How did you?
I'm sorry.
What did McMurry give you that you didn't already have?
Well, it's hard to say looking back on it, but I will say this. McMurray prepared me for my first job, my second job, my third job, my fourth job. I mean, and it all comes back in phases, that you go, oh, I've been here, I've done that, and the experience and the mentorship that I got from Coach Christopher, Coach Kimbrell, Coach Estes, Coach Fornes, Coach Newsom, Coach Aldridge, all those guys, come back in some form at some point. And, you draw from those, so to speak, you draw from the well of experience. And it's hard to really put my finger on any one thing. But I think Coach Fornes and Coach Newsom helped me to grow up and take responsibility. And the biggest lesson I think I would say is to be accountable. An adult takes responsibility for what they do. And I didn't do it perfectly, but I learned that lesson from those guys. And so as a coach, I wanted my players to be accountable for what they're doing and to be honest with themselves, not because I'm cracking a whip on them or trying to make them do it, but I wanted them to understand the value of doing a job right and holding yourself accountable holding your teammates accountable while still being a good teammate, while still being a leader within the program. And I think that's really important for a young man to learn. I was fortunate to have several coaches that stressed and emphasized that. And even the guys I coached with at McCullough and at Permian, they taught me a ton of stuff on how to handle a particular situation. Like I said, I didn't do it right a lot of the time, but I learned each time, and I think I progressed. By the time I quit coaching, I think I'd finally begun to learn how to coach, and that's when I went to Fort Worth Pipe and Supply. So, but that education kind of ended, but I do treasure and really value the lessons that I learned from those coaches.
All right, now you had a successful law profession, and you sold pipe, and you was in the oil business for a long time, and you had several different titles. But when they called you coach, when you had the title of coach, what does that mean to you? Does it have a different meaning when you were there, or does it for now, or how do you look at it?
That's a great question, and I look at it as a kind of a badge of honor, a salutation of respect for a young person, whether it's a male or female. I even have, students that called me coach I never coached them. They were. It's going to be politically incorrect, but they were girls. I never coached them, and so, but they still refer to me as coach, and it's heartwarming when I get a text or a post or any kind of correspondence that begins with coach, comma, and then tell me something. I think every guy who ever worn a whistle appreciates that. Kind of funny story. When I got to Conroe, the students there didn't refer to teachers and coaches as coach or mister. They'd just call you by your last name. And you talk about bristling. Coach Newsom didn't like it. I didn't like it, but Conroe had a little different approach. They were one of the bigger schools. They had their own ways, and when in Rome, you do as the Romans do. I understand that, but that changed. The kids kind of warmed up, and they were young enough to be reprogrammed, I guess. But the people who worked there, they didn't consider that a sign of disrespect to be called by their last name. That's just what everybody did. But back to your question, I think being a coach is so important. And I'll say this, because I worked with the Texas Youth Council out there with Jim Gobin and Rex. I can't remember his name, that were McMurry guys, but we all worked out there at the Texas Youth Center out there near the Abilene Country Club on Treadway for troubled youth. And the thing that I learned while I was at McMurry, when I was in that program, and I got the job because of McMurry, was young men want boundaries. They need boundaries. They need that navigational buoy to direct them in their chosen path. When you don't have those guardrails or buoys or a point of light to focus on, it's scary, especially as a young man not having any, idea of where the wall is or where that cliff is. And so they will fight you tooth and toenail to find out where that wall is, but they want the wall. It's like, in the Few Good Men, you want me on that wall. You need me on that wall. And that's an over exaggeration. And I don't mean to dramatize it, but it's important that young people know and understand where the line is drawn. And you need to do that with love, with firmness, but also with that person's best interest in your heart. And sometimes it takes, a little extra juice, if you will. And our coaches were not, in fact, they were even enthusiastic about administering that extra juice sometimes to make sure that I understood where that line was. I didn't appreciate it at the time at all. I fought it just like every other young man fights it. But I think it's important that we, as men and coaches and quote, gentlemen, whatever you want to say, whatever role we're playing now and where we are in our lives, is we continue to hold young men to that same standard that we were held to and show them why. Not with the iron fist, but with the velvet glove.
Well, the importance of athletics and competition has always been a part in developing young adults into their next level. What do you think about the everybody gets a trophy now? Is that something you really enjoy?
This is going to be broadcast to families, correct? Yeah, I would just say emphatically that is probably one of the worst practices that's ever been foisted on the youth of America and wherever else it occurs. It is absolutely counter to everything I believe in. Is that
it just doesn't? I mean, it's always nice to get the W, and it always hurts to get the L. But sometimes you learn from the L to get more W's and how to get a W.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I keep telling my grandsons, and I tried to impart this to my players. I'm going to love you whether you play bad or you play great. It doesn't matter. What I care about is your effort and your attitude. Those two things, your effort and your attitude, you can control every single second you're out there. You go out there and you give me 100% effort with a great attitude, then you're never going to hear me complain. But when you go out there and you commit to do perform and help your teammates, I'm going to be on you like a chicken on a June bug. And that's all I'm going to say about that.
Well, when looking at when you were at Castleberry, and then you came to McMurry, you stepped up a different level. You're now competing in a different level, and so you had to use some of those things that you just now talked about because the play was faster, the people were faster. When they hit you, it hurt worse than it did before. So that you had a lot of stake into the deal. So that really, I would suspect that your career at McMurry also added to your philosophy about what you just got through talking about.
Oh, no question. When I got there, Coach Barnes, he was not the kind of coach that would feel sorry for you. He'd say, get over there and play linebacker, get over there and play defensive end. I'm kind of going, I'm the guy who wears the red jersey, I don't get hit in practice, coach, I'm going, are you kidding me? And so, but I'll tell you this, Robert Slaughter, Jay Underwood, Rosenberg, Bobby Jester, Chuck Anderson, Roger Martin, whoever you want to talk to, they didn't care who the bullies were. You remember we called ourselves bullies. Were the scout team, and so I never will forget running into Chuck Anderson one time during practice, and because back then we ran the wishbone, we were practicing because Roger and and James Page were alternating at quarterback, and kind of running the wishbone. Oh man, I'm telling you what, I would take so many aspirin, so many. I don't know if I could steal some Darvon from you or something. My head ached every day for months, but that taught me that, once again, when you're desperate, I didn't have the money to go to college. My only hope was to get a scholarship. If I didn't get a scholarship, I'd been in Vietnam. Uh, so that's true. So I was, anxious to make the grade, and so my motivation, I guess, was a little different. I'm not sure if that's exactly responsive to your question, but yeah, I learned a lot. Some of it out of absolute dire necessity. You had to learn the lessons.
Well, those are some things that a lot of times your experiences that you end up with, whether it be on the field, off the field, wherever, formal or informal, are a huge thing for your development of character and things like that. And that's one of the
Absolutely.
things. That's one of the things I remember the most about the faculty. I guess mainly the coaches. They in McMurray, they seem to care about you. They seem to, want you to do well. And
Yes.
They don't mind complimenting you, but they don't probably compliment you as much as they do chew on your butt. But at the same time, you knew what you had to do, and you knew whether
Oh
you
yeah.
did it or you didn't do it. So
Yeah.
and that
Well,
that's
Dr. Joe Humphrey was a good example of that. You remember
yeah,
Dr. Joe?
yeah, the Irish Garden Joe.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well,
I'm sorry to interrupt you.
that's some of the things that I remember about McMurray is that it seemed like wherever you went, you were supported in some form or fashion if you were able or willing to be supported. You have to be able to go that extra mile. But I always
Yeah.
felt like that it was small enough that we didn't have, I grew up 36 miles from Lubbock, and I never wanted to go to Tech because it's just so big. And
Yeah.
I didn't want to be just a number. I felt more comfortable at McMurray, smaller, all that kind of business. But
Yeah.
I just I appreciate your attitude as far as how you conducted your business, and you were a good representation of the Indians, and you went out and made a decent living, better than decent. We're proud of you, man.
Well, I appreciate that. Can I tell you one quick story about? I just reminded myself of when I got drafted, and I went into the recruiting station there in Abilene. I was going to one of the uh, training bases in Louisiana. I'll think of the name of it in a minute. But I'm in the hearing booth, sitting in there in my underwear, taking my physical. I'm gone. I'm gone from McMurray. This is after my first year. I got drafted because my number was real low. Anyway, it's a long story, but I got the hearing phones on. I'm supposed to be hitting the button when you hear the beep. Well, I couldn't hear it. There's a riot going on in the recruiting center. So I finally just take the headphones off. I'm going, this is ridiculous. I open the door. You're in like a phone booth, an old-timey wooden phone booth. And I look out, and these guys are mooning the sergeants. They're, basically, flashing signs. Maybe they were gang signs. I don't know what they meant. But anyway, they were really disrupted, ripping up their papers, throwing them. I mean, and this is in Abilene, Texas, down, I think it's on Taylor Street in the Federal Building. And so I'm just standing there watching this. I mean, I'm gobsmacked. I mean, my dad was World War II veteran. My brother, Vietnam veteran. All my uncles, my granddad, everybody been in the military. I'm as military as you can get. And this guy walks up to me and he salutes me. And he says, young man, Mr. Kissinger ended the war on Saturday. You are free to go. This is at like 6:30 in the morning on Monday. Okay. Kissinger signed the treaty on Saturday to end the Vietnam War. So I had already checked out of school. I was gone. I walked back to McMurry because I didn't have a car. So I walked from downtown back to McMurray and re-enroll in school, and they honored my scholarship still. So it was, there were so many things that happened that were just fortuitous that, I feel like I've had a charmed life.
Well, and McMurray played a big part of that, didn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It was part of the charm. So yes, absolutely.
And some people say charming is not the same.
Well, yeah. Well, I want to give a shout out to Larry Nichols too. Larry, when I first got there, he had these carpet squares that he had sewed together. They were samples. He had sewed them together. He had carpet in his room. Well, when he left, he gave them to me up there, and I was up on 4 South. I had these carpet squares in my dorm. I felt like I was in the Taj Mahal, buddy. I had shag carpet with these. I mean, they were all different color squares. I mean, it was like a kaleidoscope of colors, but it was carpet, man. You didn't have to get out on the tile floor. So anyway, Larry Nichols helped me in so many ways, and Joe Bob Brewster was another one. So there's not enough time to go through all of them, but you were there. You were in my wedding. So, we've been friends a long time, Charles. So I treasure that friendship.
I agree, Hobbs. I hold you in high esteem as well. Have you, one other question I want to ask you, and like I said, the statute of limitation is over. So how did you invest your NIL money when you played at McMurray?
Most of it went into the vending machines. Those quarters. I think it took quarters back then, but I'd run out of quarters pretty quick. And then the remainder, Debbie and I would, and this is a true story, we would sell blood every 6 weeks. And that's how I got my running money. Debbie she is the universal donor. I don't know if it's O negative, A positive. I don't know what it is. She's a universal donor. So she got like twice as much as I'd get. I'd get like $10 or $15. But that was our NIL money. Was we'd go sell blood every 6 weeks, and then we'd go to was it Taco Bueno or something like that, where they had 50-cent tacos or dollar tacos or something, and that's how we survived.
Well, have you got any Coach Bat stories? We're getting pretty close to the end of our hour, but have you got a Coach Bat story?
Well, I've got a Jimmy Allen story.
Okay. How about that?
Well, Busby and I were out doing some extra conditioning one night. That's what we were doing. We were over running, getting in extra conditioning. It was about dark. And so we're going back to the field house, in between Old McMurray, the old Indian gym, coming off the track there to the field house. And we hear some noise over there beside the track. And what is that? And we go over there, and Jimmy Allen had tried to get up over the curve on the track, and he fallen out of his wheelchair. And so he is one mad hombre. He is so mad. And he is just chattering like a chipmunk, trying to get that wheelchair, trying to get back in there. Of course, he couldn't. So Busby walks over there, and I didn't know what it was. I was 2 or 3 steps behind Busby, and Busby goes, "Hey, look at here. What do we got here?" And I can't quote it chapter verse, but essentially, I said, "Well, Jimmy, we're going to help you." And Busby goes, "No, I think we need to go on over and get dressed." And Jimmy goes, he's making all kinds of noise. He's getting madder and madder. So finally, we let it go on for 10 or 15 seconds. We had a little sport with Jimmy. And after he calmed down, he was fine. But it was just one of those moments where, looking back on it, it was a mean thing to do. But Jimmy mentioned it a couple of times later on that it made him feel like one of the guys, that we treated him like we might treat anybody else. And he appreciated that. He didn't appreciate it at the time, not one iota, but later he did it. So that's kind of what we're talking about here. Sometimes, there's a silver lining in a black cloud if you look for it. And Jimmy did. That's what I kind of want to say is he found some humor and something, in his heart. And I don't know what caused Busby to be that way, but, and I feel bad because I wasn't, a big enough person trying to go, come on, Buzz, let's do it. I just played right along. Whatever Busby said, I just did. I just went along with it. So anyway, it's one of those stories that I'm not proud of, but I remember very distinctly Jimmy's reaction to it afterward. I'm proud of that. So I'm happy with Jimmy's acceptance of us.
I heard a story about it was told back again. Jay Underwood was telling it the other day about when at homecoming they were pinning the colors on the Braves, and Jimmy was being pinned by someone. He said who it was, and that's when they tried to get him a new wheelchair and had that raised all that money, and that's when they gave it to him.
Yep.
And it was a cute. I mean, it was one of those tear jerkers. It's still it just meant so much to him.
Oh, it was well, and it was emblematic of McMurry and the program, and everything that we had was taking care of someone who was not just someone who needed it, but someone who deserved it. And we all felt good about chipping in on that one. So it was a good deal.
And I think that's what we're looking at as far as it is an emblematic picture of what we were at McMurry and what McMurry was to us.
Absolutely. Well, and you asked about Coach Bat real quick. One of my first memories of him was riding behind the bus. When we left, we were going on a road trip. We were going out of town, going somewhere. And, we'd park the bus there between the Hunt PE Center and the old field house. And we'd pull out, whatever that street was back on the backside, we'd pull out and go up toward, I guess it was 14th Street. And he was behind on his bicycle, on his Toyota, as he called it, with the flag. And he is standing up, pumping that bike. And he is, he's just yelling all Kumba. And you could tell, I mean, his face was so, I started saying enlightened. That's not right. It was so lit up. He was so happy, so gung-ho for the Indians. He put his heart and soul in it. And it was, I remember then kind of going, I think I kind of misjudged Neil or Coach Bat, because I just thought he was, I don't know, not a mascot, but a guy just kind of hung around. He was steeped in it. He was steeped in that McMurry tradition, and he loved that school.
And it was contagious. When you were around Neil, it was contagious, but it was a good time for him.
Yeah.
Lonnie, you got anything else you want to put in as before we close her down?
Well, I don't think so. I just would like to give a heartfelt thanks to all my teammates and friends that I met at McMurry. I mean, it's way too numerous to name every one of them, but so many teammates, so many memories and experiences that we had. Guys like Lefevre and Randy Stone and Loopy and Walter and Smoss, Barnes, Page, whom am I leaving out? Randy White. There were a bunch of guys. Sal Andrade was one of, I can't believe I didn't mention him. Oaxaca. Larry Stewart. I don't know if you remember Larry Stewart, played fullback for us. Just Charles Alexander, guys, Doyle Snell, Doc Shelby, Dana Mayfield. All those guys were guys that we grew up with. And I hope that they have as many good memories as you and I have for our experience there. So it was great. And, I'm going to close with saying, Debbie and I got married in August of 1973 in plain view of everybody. Okay? Because her dad was a Methodist minister in Plainview, Texas. And you remember because you were there. And Sully was there. Busby was there. So those memories can't be taken away. I have pictures, and when I look at them, I smile. And I guess I would close with this. We need to have a reunion and not just have a one-day deal. We need to have a couple-of-day deal, come and go thing, where people can come and, do different things and just have a rallying deal and have plenty of drinks and food.
Well, Lonnie, I appreciate it. I appreciate you being here. And as we reach the conclusion of this podcast, I want to thank Lonnie and also our listening audience. Please stay tuned to the Alakumba Facebook page for other podcasts with the old McMurry Indians. And as we close, we always remember that once an Indian is always an Indian. And let's keep the drums beating. This has been a Sully 54 broadcasting presentation. Alakumba.
Alakumba.